On this edition of The Color Between the Lines,
He is trying to fill his father's shoes, right? Stepping in his footsteps. And he's starting to feel it. Summer's here. He's starting to feel the weight of it all.
remember the book The Skin I'm In and the complex journey of Malika Madison and how she was struggling with self-esteem issues and colorism, which was a whole nother subject of complex issues. Well, the author, Sharon G. Flake, writes a new book, and it's called The Family I'm In. And this one is about father-son relationships. You really don't want to miss this one.
I'm Esther Dillard, chatting with writers, authors, and experts who offer an added perspective for listeners. This is The Color Between the Lines.
Well, I am honored to speak to you, someone who's been doing this for quite some time. The skin I'm in is like 25, no,
It's like 27.
27. Yeah. That's a long time to be in the
Uh,
game. So, I mean, like, I'm honored to have someone of your caliber speaking to me, a newbie author. So, I'm really happy. Well, let me talk first. Although many I know about the family I'm in, and it's a sequel of The Skin I'm In, please explain to our listening audience who may not know where the family I in comes from and what the story is essentially about.
okay. 27 years ago, I wrote a book called The Skin I'm In. A lot of people know about that book. It's about a dark-skinned girl who gets bullied. So it's about bullying, colorism, and loving yourself just the way you are. A lot of generations grew up under that book. People were always asking me for a follow-up. My answer was always, no, I'm not doing it. Sometimes you wish people had stopped while they were ahead. So I didn't want to be one of those people. But for the 20th anniversary of the Skin I'm In, we did put out a follow-up book called The Life I'm In. And the bully from the first book tells her story. So people get to, that book is about trafficking, second chances, where is God in our midst, loving your neighbor, that sort of thing. Um, and then I decided, well, I should tell the boy's story. John was somebody that teased Malika, the person that got bullied in the first book. And people always said, does he like her? We think he really likes her. So if you read the first one, then you have to find out if he really likes her. But this book is about like John is desperate to have his first girlfriend. He's about 16, 16 and a half, have a girlfriend to date, get his first kiss. Part of his challenge is getting all that, but it's also a dad who really is a really a community hero, hard worker, a guy that's traditional that believes in, carrying the weight for the family. But he also would like sort of a different kind of boy, a boy that's like reflects his strength. And John is a nerd. He does archery. He's the only boy in the book club for girls, right? And so the father would really wish he were like toughen up, sort of. He's pushing him to do that. And it's also about another boy, Caleb, whose father is ill. And Caleb again loves his father and has decided, I'm gonna do what my dad would have done. I'm gonna step up. I'm working. He's taking on a job. He is what well, my mind slipped. Sorry. He's taking on a job. He is trying to fill his father's shoes, right? Stepping in his footsteps. And he's starting to feel it. Summer's here. And he's starting to feel the weight of it all, as are the men feeling different weights and responsibilities in the shoes that they're in.
Mm. What do you hope that people get from, I guess, John's relationship with his father, where you talk about vulnerability and traditional toughness? I know that maybe young men and their caregivers will probably get different messages from that relationship. What do you hope that they get from that?
But right, so John goes to him and has all these conversations, But that's Caleb's father who is ill, who cannot himself be vulnerable about being a father that's sort of being replaced by his son. What does that feel like when you're the man of the house, but you're not making the money, right? But your son is, and you have a loving son. So it's all of this. I want people to see that relationships are complex, that even though some of these seem like, well, they seem like heavy subjects, John is very funny. So there's a lot of humor in it. People say boys don't read. I want them to understand that they will read and that they do read. A lot of my biggest fans for the skin I'm in, where the protagonist is a girl, are boys.
Yeah.
Pop up to me
Yeah.
and also say, hey, that's my story. Either I've been bullied or I've been the bully, right? And so that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that churches and other religious organizations and clubs that work with boys will decide we can bring boys together and maybe fathers and sons or male role models. And let's start to have conversations that society doesn't always maybe allow boys to have. One of them, which John, is some of the stuff he says about girls, where he says, well, girls are getting all, they don't need this because they're like getting all the positions in schools, or why do they dress like that? I think, we may not want to hear that, but we want a space where they can have that conversation and you can work through some of that stuff with them, or at least know what's the thinking behind what is it like to be a boy? What is it like to be a man today? I don't think I have all the answers or solutions. I just like to start the conversation.
Why do you think that people resonated so much with the skin I'm in for so long, especially with young people and adults?
I almost don't know. Last year, somebody posted the book cover, and in 30 hours, there were 670,000 views.
Wow. Wow.
And I know 30 hours because I kept checking, saying, when is this going to peak? It's peaked at 700,000 about now. I think people see themselves in there. First of all, Malika's very honest and very vulnerable. And it's almost like hearing somebody says, now come on, come closer. I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm not gonna hold anything back about what happened to me. And then all those children and adults who have read it start to say, wait a minute, I thought I was the only one being bullied and teased. Oh, I thought I was the only one somebody was talking about my skin or my freckles or my teeth or my whatever. And I have adults who will write me at 30 and say, I just had a baby and I bought the skin I'm in for my daughter.
Wow.
Daughter's not going to be able to read it till at least fifth grade, eighth grade, right? But they bought it because they're saying they changed my life. One girl in college said I was the only Black kid in the program, master's program. And I was feeling some kind of way about myself one day. And I remembered the skin I'm in, and I read it, and I remembered I could do anything.
Mm.
So it has that kind of long-lasting power and impact. You can't intend it. So on a certain level, I don't even know. It's a good book, but I don't know how it does it.
I know that with Malika as a character, you being a woman, you can kind of go into that character as a girl. But how did you do that with the boys and being able to kind
Go
of embody them and be able to bring that forward?
I could always do it. And I did it when I was in college. I wrote fiction in college, and I wrote from a boy's perspective and a girl's perspective. And it might be because I grew up with three brothers. My dad is still alive. He's 98, so he was always in the home. My uncles would come by and visit with my aunts. They were always telling stories and having conversations. I worked with young people for about 8 or 9 years. One year as a group home, and that was all girls in my cabin. But when you have all girls, you have a lot of boys trying to get in that cabin. And then then 7 years in foster care, and some of them were boys. Some of them were 18-year-old boys that I had to develop treatment plans. I had to go to court with. I had to have conversations with about how's it going in the foster home. Take them to visit their parents. And so that sort of conversation and intimacy that you develop with young people. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then I think God gives you gifts and talents that you can't fully explain. And that's like, I'm 70. How do you embody a 13-year-old, 14-year-old? And I tell people, because I'm still probably 13 and 15 inside. So there's a bit of me there. Um, and I think a genuine respect for young people that, when I'm in the presence, sometimes people will say in schools, hey, I don't think I ever really treat them like children. I don't treat them like adults either. I just treat them as human beings. I get the chance to tell stories about Black kids, urban kids a lot of times in a world that doesn't always value them or respect them or see them. And I think I take that part seriously because I was one. And I'm always trying to say, y'all don't know who they are. This is obviously everybody's not going to be on those pages, but this is who they are. John, who was funny. John, whose father is not 100%, none of us are, but he loves him and he is supporting him in the best way that he can. Fathers that are supportive, but fathers that are not perfect. Fathers that are struggling themselves in some ways because we all have our struggles. Boys who never had girlfriends. I don't assume that a Black boy who's 16 years old has never had a girlfriend. Right? So I assume that all things are possible. I had a character that was 17 that I had get married. He was 6 to 17. And somebody says, what? You have to believe it's possible, right? You have to believe that it's all possible for them, for the good and for the challenging. And so.
Well, I want to ask the last question. If someone wants to have you, Miss Flake, come to their school or to their organization and talk about these books, how do they get in touch with you?
I'm at SharonGFlake.com. If you go there, that's my website, comes right to my email, and I'm on there every day. You're very likely to hear from me the same day or the next day. So,
thanks.
and you can reach me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on all that stuff. But if you really want me to come, I've spoken to about 300,000 young people in my career. And so that's one of the things I really like to do. So reach out.
Thank you so much, Miss Flake, for joining us on the BIN.
Thank you, guys. Keep up the good work. I appreciate you.
All right. That's it for this edition of The Color Between the Lines. If this conversation moved you or inspired you, please subscribe to The Color Between the Lines. Hit that like button so that I know that I am on the right track. And if you have any suggestions on the guest or a new author or a new producer that's putting out a documentary or interesting film that's connected to different cultures and backgrounds, feel free to drop a comment below. I'm Esther Dillard.